Hey, what's up guys? Old man with a big opinion here. I think I have most of my stuff ready now. Got my spoon, got my bowl, and I'm gonna make a ramen. And I have talked about water in the past. This is one of those meals that requires about 2 cups of water. It's gonna make me 370-ish calories. And it's a staple around here. If you want something kind of quick to eat, fairly shelf stable. It's got its little beef flavor packet, and I can automatically tell you that I add more water, but I also add more of my own beef bouillon powder. And so, when you're looking at this stuff, I never really measure it out. 1 teaspoon is extra 10 calories. So we might be getting 380 out of this. But this is just one of those meals that a lot of people eat. It can be seen as a struggle meal. I don't always just do the water and the bouillon. Sometimes we amp it up a little bit. Get that going. We add eggs to it, add, chopped up ham, other stuff that can kind of add more protein to it. But if you're like me, you're on a budget, we're trying to increase our water storage. One of the cheapest things that you can do is you buy the 5-gallon containers from Walmart. But there's something else that you can also add to your water storage if you have no water storage at all, and you want to have any sort of water storage, and that is reusing these type of containers. Here's my Diet Mountain Dew. That's 2 liters of water. Here's my my juice. I really like using these containers. It's only 3 liters, but it's a much thicker plastic and it had juice in it. Very, very easy to carry. And I've also used these containers. It also carried juice in it. The son likes his juice. And instead of pitching these, the first thing I do is I rinse them out with cold water. I fill it about a third of the way up, slosh it around, dump it out. Do that 1 or 2 times. Then I take a little bit of warmer water, and going back to my spoon, I don't even fill this completely up, but I put a little bit of bleach, slosh that around, dump it out, and I'll rinse it 3 or 4 times. Then I'll add my water to it. These containers right here are probably the cheapest form of water storage that you can go with. And most of us could probably store a fairly substantial amount of water doing it that way, because we're constantly drinking this stuff. If you are any level of healthy, you're getting some sort of fruit juices. Save this container, find a shelf in your house, and just kind of start stacking them up. You are increasing the days that you can survive on your own for relatively inexpensive. I more recommend these 2 because they come with handles. They didn't have a carbonation in it, a juice product. They're a little bit bigger, but there's nothing wrong with storing water in here. And you can even taste test it. If you didn't rinse it out very well, you're still going to kind of taste a little bit of what was in before this. The soda bottle is the thinnest of the bunch. So, I would only recommend keeping those for 6 months to a year. The juice container, it's a much thicker container. I've had some of these. I moved 9 hours away, and I brought dozens of these with me. The other big benefit of doing it that way is, I've got my 50-gallon drums. If I was trying to help anyone, and I'm filling up their water bottle from a 55-gallon drum, they know that I have at least, if it's just one person, that's like 2 months of water for someone. If I came out and I said, here you go, this is what I can spare. This is going to get them about a day. Kind of depends on where you live. If it's Texas in July, you probably want to drink more than 2 liters of water. Or if you're chopping wood and, being very physically active, you probably want to drink a little bit more. But water, it's super important. And, I've looked at larger containers. I want to get, there's like an 800-gallon container that costs several $100s. And it's not in the budget currently. I don't need ice right now. It's not in the budget currently. But I can finish some soda, rinse it out, fill it up, and look at that and go, we're going to make it a little bit further. It is space dependent. You live in an apartment. You're not filling up hundreds of these things unless you're just dedicating your entire life to, this possibility of this thing happening. The only real downside to this is most of this water I store in a closet that we don't use anything else for that closet. Try to keep it in a cool, dry place. It does get fairly heavy, so have some sturdy shelves. And it's best to have a Sharpie. That way you can write, when you put the water in there. That way you can, go through it. Now, haven't written anything on this one because I fill the dog's water up with this. Fill the cat's water up with it. I go fill their bowls up. I refill this bottle. And so this one, this water stays in there for less than a day because I fill their bowls up and replace the water. But there's a lot of space on here that I can Sharpie on, January 1st, 2026. Oh, I've dumped it out. I've used it. I can write further down. But, that's my cheap, budget-friendly way of storing water. You can also use mason jars that you haven't stored food in. I don't think this was originally a mason jar. I think this jar had pizza sauce in it. You can throw the glass container away, or you can fill it up with water. Once you have, saved a certain amount, then you can go with your bigger water storage. But, last argument that I would make, I would rather have dozens of these filled up with water than have no water at all. This water came from the tap. Tap water is extremely inexpensive. I'm going to be happy with 5 gallons of water over 0 gallons. I'm going to be happy with 50 gallons over 48 gallons. This is, that mid-level prepping of, the power goes out. I can fill up the back of the toilet and stay close to normal with my toilet. I can use this to make my ramen, which the microwave is probably going to keep beeping at me till I take it out. I can use it to wash my hands, give myself a little hobo bath, whatever. Any water storage is better than 0 water storage. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like, subscribe, share, comment, do all that sort of stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one.